His name is Christopher Arendt, and he is a former guard at Guantanamo, and he's come here at the invitation of cage prisoners, and with Merzem and Sami, and partly with Jarala, he'll be making a tour of different cities in Britain, talking about Guantanamo from his experiences. And I think the bravery that it has required for him to want to come and do that with us is something very special. So I would like you to welcome him.
Hello, it's very nice to meet all of you. My name is Christopher, and in my country, I'm what we call trailer park trash. I don't know what you guys call it here in England. I believe you call them hoodlums. And when I was 17, I made the one decision that would inform, not only inform, but make all of the rest of the decisions for the next 6 years of my life that meant anything. I joined the Army National Guard, which I'm pretty comfortable saying was a gigantic mistake. I joined the field artillery upon the promise that it was virtually impossible that I would ever be deployed in the global war on terror, because I was not super enthusiastic about the idea of participating in this war. I wasn't necessarily enthusiastic about participating in any war. I wasn't full of ideas that any of that would be any fun. I at most envisioned myself sandbagging the Mississippi, or I don't know, maybe saving cats out of trees or something like that. Something much more innocuous than what eventually happened. But then came the day in October when my totally insane chief, my section chief named Sergeant Caswell, called me on the phone and in a classically immoderated way barked out, raging bull," and that was it, and hung up the phone. Seems had no idea how to communicate with other human beings. And Raging Bull had already been established as our call signal for that we were going to be deployed. So I started drafting up plans to leave the country, or to, I don't know, maybe change my gender and get a new name or something like that to get out of it. But none of that really panned out, and it all kind of, time was running out, and I couldn't find a place that was going to change my gender, give me plastic surgery quickly enough, and certainly didn't have the money for the operation. So I went into drill the next month that we had it, because National Guard is 1 weekend a month or 2 weeks a year while George Bush is in office, indefinitely forever, whenever they want you to be there for all time. So I went into drill, and we all gossiped about where we were going, and we were pretty sure it was going to be Iraq, which is, where I'm sure all of you can imagine where people that fired cannons are most necessary. Well, not necessary at all, really, but we imagined that at least we'd be able to keep our jobs, our military occupational specialties. It came as a shock, I guess, when Captain Russell, our commander, walked in front of our platoon, and we were sitting on the bleachers, and he said, "Get yourselves ready, Charlie. We're going to Guantanamo Bay." And I'd heard about Guantanamo Bay before, and I was pretty positive that was rather touchy political subject. Guantanamo Bay, as far as I could pick out from the news, was where they kept all of the hardened terrorists and all of the people that were, directly responsible for 9/11. And, well, at least that's what we were getting on our end of the news. And I looked around me at a bunch of old, toothless, white hillbillies, and I was thinking, why on why would they pick us? Why would they send us to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba? That seems ridiculous. I can't for the life of me imagine why they would pick probably the most culturally insensitive people that I've ever met in my whole life that had decided that I was A, a homosexual, and B, that was something that made me not worth anything just because I read books and could speak in sentences that contained more than 5 words, and sometimes I didn't even swear. So I was. It seemed like a peculiar decision by the Pentagon to send us down there, and I pretty much wrote it off as a fluke. And but I mean, nonetheless, at this point in time, my concerns were mostly just about myself. I didn't want to leave my family, and I didn't want to leave my friends. I mean, the deployment at the time was sold to us as an indefinite deployment of upwards of 2 years, and I don't know how many people have had to leave their families and their friends for 2 years, or any time really at all, to hang out with people that you don't want to hang out with and do things you don't want to do. But it's not something I look forward to at all. So I sulked and I went home, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell any of my friends, and I just kind of tried to pass it off and act like everything was okay, and I wasn't going to go anywhere. And I just let November sneak up on me because November was when we were leaving, and eventually November snuck up on me, and we left. And I tried my hardest to get out of the deployment and to tell them that I was crazy, and not necessarily crazy, but military crazy, that I really didn't think that I could do what they were going to ask of me. They wanted me to go down to a place where I was going to have to be a big, be a big mean man and walk up and down cells and push people around and tell them what to do and keep them down. And I used to like smiling quite a bit, and I like jokes, and I don't really like pushing people, and I'm not a very violent person. I never really liked any of that, and I'd never met a Muslim person before in my whole life because like I said, I was trailer trash, and in Michigan it's not exactly rife with Islamic culture. I didn't know anything about Islamic culture. I couldn't even have told you what a Quran was before I went to Guantanamo, and so I tried to tell him I can't do this. You've got the wrong guy. I'm just I screwed up. I signed the paper. I'm sorry. Let me off the hook. I'm not who you want down there. I'm not your guy. And it's going to make me depressed. I told them. They asked me, well, would you ever hurt yourself, or would you ever kill anybody? And I said, almost certainly. I would definitely, like at the time I was definitely suicidal. I didn't see myself coming home from that deployment. It wasn't a dangerous deployment. We weren't gonna fight anybody. I would never even hold a weapon while I was down there except to qualify on the range. But I didn't think I was gonna make it back home. I was almost certain that something was gonna change over the course of that was going to make life not worth living. And we were only in the mobilization stage, and I was so depressed I could barely even get myself out of bed in the morning. And I hated the people I was with, so it was also, if it wasn't suicide, I was going to end up killing somebody from my unit for sure. But that didn't pan out. They told me I had commitments and that I'd signed papers, and the military takes signing papers very seriously. At least the United States military does. They take promises very seriously, but as you can see, our new president-elect Obama doesn't take promises seriously at all.
We'll come to Obama. Chris, let's go to when you first met detainees and how was your interaction with them?
Well,
how did you find them? You said you'd never met a Muslim person before.
No, one of the first Muslim people I ever met in my life is sitting in this audience right now. The very first day I worked on the blocks, I worked on Oscar Block, which is an isolation block. It's where the men that are in Guantanamo Bay are kept inside of solid steel walls that are approximately, they're the same size as the normal cells. They're about 5 by 8 feet, and the detainees in there can barely hear one another. Guantanamo was already extremely hot, but when you put somebody in a solid metal box, they get pretty agitated. And as I later found out, this gentleman had spent a good deal of time in these metal boxes, and it was my first day on the blocks, and I was pretty nervous because I didn't know what to say. I wanted to apologize, but I couldn't. I didn't even know if anybody spoke English, and what was I going to, how could I possibly apologize for what was going on? And I just kept walking up and down, and he was screaming at me. He wanted something, but I just kept ignoring him and walking by and ignoring him and ignoring him.